A Grief Guide. Chapter 1. A Grief/Bereavement Guide. Deal with grief. A part of getting over it is to know you never will. To everything there is a season. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. To heal is to become whole. To become whole is to grieve. To grieve is to let go. To let go is to be free. From TV show Women of Wisdom. Grief has its own schedule. Until you honor it enough to let go, you'll be traveling at half-mast with your anchor down. Death is the most significant taboo in our society. People don't want to deal with it before it happens or even when it happens. No matter how much you expect it, even with the loss of an older person, it still leaves you empty and numb for a while. A good song in pop culture relating to death and grief is The Living Years by Michael Rutherford, where he says something like he wishes he could have told his father all those things he felt, like how he loved him and wished he had been there when he had his first baby. The operative word in dealing with somebody dying is victim. Don't let them nor you become a victim. Let them die with dignity, then after it's over, don't fall to pieces and get helpless. Sure, sit around for a while, mope, have your little cry, but think, what would the decedent have wanted you to do? Get depressed, or go on and honor his or her memory by becoming the best person you can be. You can't avoid suffering, feeling down and grieving for a while, but it shouldn't affect who you are and what you do to stay inspired about your life day by day. There are many different ways to grieve. Survivors may experience intense emotions and intrusive thoughts, or they may not. Some people find their identity fundamentally changed, no longer the parent, spouse, or loved person they once were. Some people sometimes underestimate the gravity of their loss until months or years later. They seem to be doing well only to find themselves feeling sad at times like anniversaries, birthdays, and holidays. Deal with it the best way you can. A high percentage of elderly people die within a year of their spouse. Bereaved people should evaluate themselves for depression for a while following a loved one's death and get some help if need be. Try to resist the temptation to make abrupt decisions like quit your job, sell the house, move in with family, etc. Wait. Let yourself feel the full range of emotions that come with profound loss before you do anything rash. While privacy is also important to healing, don't alienate yourself from the world. Stay active and inspired about life as the decedent would have surely wanted you to do. Talk to a pastor or counselor or a friend about how you feel. Join a support group to learn from those who have been down the road before you. The negative thoughts may always be there, but I've chosen not to look at death as a loss, just a part of the life cycle, death of the body but not the soul. I've chosen to believe that the soul is somewhere else. Where, I don't know, heaven or the other side somewhere. I'll unite with my friends and relatives when I get there. Other than that, I don't think about death much because life is meant for the living. Have your little pity party but move on to try to be a good person. That's how you honor someone's memory. Depression and sitting around moping are not feasible solutions. Your departed one doesn't want this for you. They want you happy, healthy, and productive, feeling normal and living a normal life as opposed to sulking in depression. There are generally 5 stages to the grieving process. 1. The first stage is denial. In order to get back to work and running your home, you push the event out of your mind and go on like nothing happened. 2. Anger soon follows as the second stage of grief. Then you bargain, looking for something to help you move on. Depression is a combination of guilt, doubt, anger, hopelessness, and fear. You accept it and move on. Don't wait until death to bring out all your unresolved feelings or to regret things you didn't get a chance to say or do with your loved ones. Take the time now to spend some time alone with them, to tell them in your own way that you love them and want to thank them for what they did for you. It'll go that much easier on you when the inevitable happens. If you know someone who is grieving, don't give them unsolicited advice nor bother them too much. Just be with them if they want a friend around. Let them talk. Don't say much. Cherish your loved ones now. Tell them what you have to now, resolve your conflicts now, because someday it may be too late. Death comes suddenly not only to older folks but to anybody at any age. Take a walk through a graveyard like I did and you'll see that people die at all ages from all manner of affliction, particularly sudden ones like car accidents, drownings, fires, shootings. Anything can happen at any time, so be on good terms with your loved ones now. The way I dealt with my grief over the loss of loved ones was to resolve within myself that I would honor their memories by becoming the best human being I was born to be. Death makes you realize the transience of life. It's not everlasting. Everybody will die at some point in time. Whether you believe in God or not, you must accept this fact and make resolutions to do something meaningful with your life beyond just being a passive consumer. It's the only thing that can really give your life meaning and give you sense out of a loved one's death. At least that's how I dealt with it. I got more serious about my life, resolved to be a better human being and do something good for the world. The first rule of grief is that it's not the end of the world. You must accept the death as part of the life process. I go back to the honor thing because that's what worked for me. You must realize that the person would have wanted you to honor him by doing your best to be a better person, not to mope around and get depressed. It sounds kind of harsh, but you gotta have your cry, acknowledge the loss in your mind, have a short period of numbness, then get on with it. Time to get happy again. Your happiness is up to you. Your dead loved ones don't want you to be depressed. Don't fall into the trap that many people do, which is to live in the past. They get sentimental with the memories and regress to those times, becoming hermits in the process. You must live in the present. Surround yourself with positive things like flowers, pets, good music, fresh air, bright colors, nice clothes, healthy food, inspirational books, funny things, new interests, creative things, sunlight, church, friends, etc. It's all right to slow down for a while, take it easy, go to friends for comfort, touch and hug people and pets, pamper yourself, do something for self-improvement's sake, find other grieving hearts and seek the advice of trusted friends. Some people choose to get busy and get on with work, which is all right, but you gotta resolve the grief within yourself too. The stages of grief according to Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross are shock and denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance, albeit in many cases, just a limited acceptance. If you feel really bad, you may want to join a support group to be with other people. When it happens to a close person, it's best not to deny it but give yourself allowances for grieving and talk it out with other people that were close to the decedent. Grief is normal. You might feel guilty about things that you could have done with this person but didn't over his or her lifetime. Obviously, guilt is bad. Just give yourself time to grieve and get on with life. Some people can never quite get over the loss of a loved one, but you can get rid of most of the empty feeling except for occasional fleeting thoughts during the day. The healing process is a natural thing. Time and patience heals most things. Some days may be better than others. You'll be up and down for a while. I see it all as a process of the rebirthing cycle, kind of like the seasons. Winter is death, then spring brings new life, meaning you must find new people/new things to do to get over the death of the loved one. In the case of a lost spouse, even for older folk, I feel that one should consider finding another love to wipe away the memory of the lost one. There's nothing dishonorable about this. Your old love would have wanted you to be happy. You can't make it feel better by becoming a hermit or a martyr. Many older widows and widowers who were with their spouses for a long time simply give up and die within a short time after the death of the first. In some cases, if the love was strong, I can understand this. The general consensus is that it takes anywhere from 6 months to 5 years to get over the death of a loved one. If you're a friend, consider sending flowers as a condolence when a friend dies. Go visit the bereaved. You don't have to say much, just be there to lend moral support and be an outlet if the close person wants to talk. If you have young children, first off, give them more credit for understanding life than you might think. They know about death from TV, they're also more sensitive than you might think. Be gentle with them. Take them aside and explain it to them in a mature, fatherly/motherly way. Let them cry and hug you if they want. Tell them about the life cycle thing and the heaven thing if you're religious. Tell them people get old and die, it's part of life. Tell them grandpa was old, it was his time to die and go to heaven. Take them to the funeral and let them be part of the process. If you don't, they'll feel like they didn't get to say goodbye. You must give them this opportunity. You might consider letting the child buy the flowers for the decedent or write a letter or draw a picture and put it into the casket. Educate them about death. Some biblical passages dealing with grief are Ecclesiastes 3:1-11, Ecclesiastes 38:17, Genesis 9:13-18, Hosea 6:1-3, Isaiah 25:6-8, Isaiah 49:15-16, Isaiah 61:1-3, Jeremiah 1:4-9, Jeremiah 31:13, Job 6:1-13, Job 7:3-16, Luke 6:21, Matthew 5:1-12, Proverbs 3:4, Proverbs 7:3, Wisdom 4:7-14. Grief one-liners. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Khalil Gibran. Grief can be a burden but also an anchor. You get used to the weight, how it holds you in place. The most painful goodbyes are the ones that are left unsaid and never explained. If you're going through hell, keep going. I love you every day. Now I will miss you every day. We belong to the largest company in all the world, the company of those who have known suffering. Helen Keller. If tears could build a stairway and memories a lane, I'd walk right up to heaven and bring you home again. It takes a minute to find a special person, an hour to appreciate them and a day to love them, but it takes an entire lifetime to forget them. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. If the people we love are stolen from us, the way to have them live on is to never stop loving them. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form. Rumi. Perhaps they are not the stars but rather openings in heaven where the love of our lost ones pours through and shines down upon us to let us know they are happy. Separation. Your absence has gone through me. Like thread through a needle. Everything I do is stitched with its color. W.S. Merwin. Every one of us is losing something precious to us. Lost opportunities, lost possibilities, feelings we can never get back again. That's part of what it means to be alive. Haruki Murakami. Every morning, I wake up and forget just for a second that it happened. But once my eyes open, it buries me like a landslide of sharp, sad rocks. Once my eyes open, I'm heavy, like there's too much gravity on my heart. Sarah Uckler. You will lose someone you can't live without and your heart will be badly broken, and the bad news is that you never completely get over the loss of your beloved. But this is also the good news. They live forever in your broken heart that doesn't seal back up. And you come through. It's like having a broken leg that never heals perfectly, that still hurts when the weather gets cold, but you learn to dance with the limp. Anne Lamott. Every evening I turn my worries over to God. He's going to be up all night anyway. Mary C. Crowley. She was no longer wrestling with the grief but could sit down with it as a lasting companion and make it a sharer in her thoughts. George Eliot. We must embrace pain and burn it as fuel for our journey. Kenji Miyazawa. Memory is a way of holding on to the things you love, the things you are, the things you never want to lose. From the television show, The Wonder Years. If you're going through hell, keep going. Winston Churchill. We acquire the strength we have overcome. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Time is a physician that heals every grief. Diphilus. No one ever really dies as long as they took the time to leave us with fond memories. Chris Sorensen. The deep pain that is felt at the death of every friendly soul arises from the feeling that there is in every individual something which is inexpressible, peculiar to him alone, and is, therefore, absolutely and irretrievably lost. Arthur Schopenhauer. There's a bit of magic in everything and some loss to even things out. Lou Reed. For many, there is comfort in knowing that others now and throughout human history have grieved the loss of someone dear to them. While grieving can be a hard and long journey, it brings greater emotional resiliency and helps us learn to open our hearts again to new loving relationships with both people and animals. Chapter 2. A Grief Website Guide 1. Grief Websites 1. 4therapy.com. aarp.org/grief-and-loss, 800 424 3410. At health.com/consumer/disorders/parental-grief.html. Bereavement.org. bereavementsupport.co.uk. beyondindigo.com. Beyond Indigo Grief Support provides information on caregiving, loss, grieving and end-of-life issues for family, friends, pets and loved ones. campjohnmark.org, Grief Recovery Program. centerforloss.com. centering.org, products. chionline.org, 800-24 Child, Children's Hospice. choices.org, Choices in Dying. comfort-for-bereavement.com. comfortzonecamp.org, 866-488-5679, free camp in Rockville, VA to help grieving kids. comfortzonecamp.org/grief-resources/ask-a-counselor. compassionatefriends.org, 877-969-0010. compassionatefriends.org/home.aspx. complicatedgrief.org. coping.org, Coping with Life's Stressors. Free online self-help books, adult books focused on recovery and parent books focused on parenting. coping-with-loss-and-grief.com. counselor.com.au/grief-counselor.html, live chat. death-dying.com. deathwithdignity.org. dgsys.com/t-golden/1grief.html. dougie.org. The Dougie Center provides support in a safe place where children, teens, young adults, and their families grieving a death can share their experiences. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/death, _desire_loss_in_western_culture, facebook.com/groups/149122968466058. facebook.com/groups/150273021690175, a closed group is for parents that have experienced loss due to twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. facebook.com/groups/283667218320416, suicide grief. facebook.com/groups/523992024370357, Christian. facebook.com/groups/98668838382, suicide grief group. facebook.com/groups/grey grief group. funeral.net/info/brvrs.html. genesisresources.com. genesis.org, Genesis Regional Medical Center, Annual Grief Recovery Camp. giftfromwithin.org. grief.net. griefcareprovider.com. griefcast.com. griefgirlfriend.com. griefhaven.org. griefhealing.com. griefhealingdiscussiongroups.com. griefnet.org. grief-recovery.com. griefrelief.org. griefwatch.net. griefwords.com. griefworksbc.com. grievingchildren.org. growthhouse.org, books. growthhouse.org, Guide to Death, Dying, Grief, Bereavement. groww.com. groww.com, Grief Recovery Online. healgrief.com. hopeedelman.com. hospicefoundation.org/grief and loss. hospicefoundation.org/grief-support.aspx hospicesj.com/healingheart.html, healing a broken heart after the death of a loved one. isabellacatalog.com journey-thrugh-grief.com catsden.com/death/index.html keepsafefoundation.com livingourlosses.com mcdes.org/board.html, Minnesota Coalition for Death Education and Support mentalhelp.net/guide/grief marepsycare.org/services/hospice/support.aspx, grief support groups missingpieces.org, grief after abortion nasi.org, hospice and home care nasbonline.org/resources/crisis_safety/griefwar.pdf, National Association of School Psychologists, Loss and Grief Resources nationaltwinloss.org.au ncpamd.com/bereavement.htm neverlettinggo.com, psychic grief nho.org, hospice nhpco.org, National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization noah-health.org/en/mental/disorders/grieving obituarieshelp.org/words_of_condolences_hub.html opn.com/willowgreen otrib.com pomc.com 888-818 POMC, Parents of Murdered Children psychcentral.com/lib/coping-with-the-loss-of-a-spouse psychcentral.com/lib/tips-for-better-managing-your-stress psychcentral.com/library/child_death.htm rainbows.org rivendell.org sadsuk.org, bereavement support to those who have lost a teenager or adult unexpectedly through sudden adult death syndrome. selfhealingexpressions.com suicide.com/suicide-center/grief.html survivorsnet.org, World Trade Center Survivors Network sympathymessageideas.com taps.org, Tragedy Assistance Program for survivors, soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines die in service to our country. targetwoman.com/articles/family-counselor.html tcf.org.uk, The Compassionate Friends, UK tcf-verdugo.org, Verdugo Hills, CA Chapter of Compassionate Friends the-bright-side.org touchstonecenter.org, Center for Grieving Children trees4achange.com/pages/sympathy-message-ideas-quotes-sympathy-card-ideas ub-counsling.buffalo.edu/relationships/endings/coping.html, coping with death and grief webhealing.com, crisis, grief, and healing widownet.org grief websites too aarp.org/home-family/caregiving/grief-and-loss, AARP, grief and loss activelymovingforward.org, actively moving forward aidc.org/aidc/default.aspx, Association for Death Education and Counseling childbereavement.org, Children's Bereavement Center childrengrieve.org, National Alliance for Grieving Children counselingstlewis.net, The Sibling Connection familyelivison.org, Family Lives on Foundation friendsforsurvival.org, Friends for Survival griefhealing.com/index.htm, grief healing griefnet.org, griefnet.org griefshare.org, griefshare grievingchildren.org, the Center for Grieving Children healgrief.org, healgrief.org helpguide.org/articles/grief-loss/coping-with-grief-and-loss/htm, Coping with Grief and Loss. HospiceFoundation.org, Hospice Foundation of America. LivingWithHeart.com, Living with Heart. LosingASpouse.com, Losing a Spouse. LosingERParents.org/losing, Losing Your Parents. MentalHealthAmerica.net, MHA. NASB-online.org/resources-and-publications/school-safety-and-crisis/addressing-grief, National Association of School Psychologists, Addressing Grief. OpenToHope.com, Open to Hope. SAMHSA.gov, SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. TAPS.org, TAPS. The Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. WebHealing.com, Web Healing Grief Resources, including articles, forums, and videos. What'sYourGrief.com. womenshealth.gov/aging-mental-health/loss-grieving.html, womenshealth.gov. Grief websites 3. aarp.org/grief-and-loss. aarp.org/grief-and-loss/home.html. aidsc.org. august.org. aidsquilt.org. angelfire.com/ob3/grieving parents. angelsforhope.org. aplasito-remember.com. bereavedparentsusa.org. bereavementmag.com. bfotoronto.ca. centerforloss.com. childrensgrief.net. clarahinton.com. climb-support.org. compassionatefriends.org. condolencephrases.net. conniebowen.com. counselingstlewis.net. cysticfibrosis.com. deafcounseling.com. debbiedickinson.com. dougie.org. enterthefreudianslip.com. facebook.com/pages/puyallup-wa/grief-inc. f-conline.com. webhealing.com. friendsofkaren.org. friendsway.org. funeralnet.com. galenpress.com. grief.org.au. griefandrenewal.com. griefdirectory.org. griefhealing.com. grieflossrecovery.com. griefsong.com. griefstore.com. groww.org. helpguide.org. helpguide.org/mental/grief_loss.htm. helptoheal.co.uk. holycrosshealth.org/hospice. hospicecaring.org. hospicechesapeake.org. hospicefoundation.org. opentohope.com. qeepr.com. thegrievingheart.info. thewebpager.com/sos. webhealing.com/forums. webhealing.com/videos. bradleyfuneralhomes.com. bradleyfuneralhomes.com/resources.html #grief. icfa.org. joannepeng.org. journeyofhearts.org. jssahospice.org. kindermourn.org. lastchapters.org. lifewords.com. livingwithheart.com. loveandyverdes.net. maledepression.com. mastersincounseling.org/loss-grief-bereavement.html. mensactivism.org. missfoundation.org. missinggrace.org. montgomeryhospice.org. ncfm.org. nfda.org. nhpco.org. parentsofsuicide.com. pomc.com. pomc.org. professionalchaplains.org. restministries.org. road2healing.com. robertspress.ca. sampleletterofsympathy.com. SamplesEmpathymessages.com, SeattleWidowed.com, SIDS.org, SIDS-network.org, SilentGrief.com, SugarLoafCounseling.com, SuicideMemorialWall.com, SurvivingSuicide.com, SympathyMessageIdeas.com, TAPS.org, TheboDY.com/index.html, ThemensCenter.com, TouchstonesOnGrief.com, Transformations.com, Trinity.edu/mkirl/death.html #D, TwinlessTwins.org, Widownet.org, WillowGreen.com, WingsGrief.org, WingsOFlight.org, WSFDA.org, ZenHospice.org. Grief websites for growthhouse.org/death.html, bereavement links, Growth House, Inc. grannyg.bc.ca/ckidbook/grief.html, children coping with grief and dying, a list of books about death, loss, illness. Rivendell.org, GriefNet, Riverdell Resources. This site has resources for those who are experiencing loss and grief and information for health professionals. LastACTS.org, LastACTS, USA, a coalition of non-profit organizations and professional associations campaigning to improve end-of-life care. CompassionateFriends.org, the Compassionate Friends, National Office, USA, a non-profit self-help organization for bereaved parents and siblings. Dougie.org, the Dougie Center, the National Center for Grieving Children and Families, USA. GriefNet.org, GriefNet. 313-761-1960. WebHealing.com, Tom Golden's Crisis, Grief and Healing page. 301-670-1027. webhealing.com/links.html. goodgriefgroups.com, goodgriefgroups.com. 770-977-6377. Fax, 770-926-3743. Centering.org, the Centering Corporation. 402-553-1200. Fax, 402-553-0507. HospiceFoundation.org/grief, Hospice Foundation of America Grief. Resource page. 800-854-3402. goodgrief.org, the Shiva Foundation. 505-757-8906. Fax, 505-757-8905. griefinc.com. 866-312-8970. Fax, 502-493-7291. mentalhelp.net. groww.com, grief recovery online for all bereaved. 407-865-9249. Fax, 407-865-6179. compassionatefriends.org, compassionatefriends.org for loss of a child. 281-491-1396. Fax, 281-491-1396. bereavementmag.com, bereavement magazine. 888-604-4673. Grief websites 5. abridgedpo.org, AIDS Bereavement and Resiliency Program of Ontario. ambiguousloss.com, ambiguous loss. bereavedparentssusa.org, bereaved parents of the USA. complicatedgrief.columbia.edu/for-the-public/complicated-grief-public/overview, Center for Complicated Grief. centerforloss.com, Center for Loss and Life Transition. compassionatefriends.org, Compassionate Friends, supporting family after a child dies. childrengrieve.org, National Alliance for Grieving Children. copefoundation.org, Cope Foundation. Dougie.org, Dougie Center. Grief.com, grief.com. Griefhealing.com, grief healing. Griefnet.org, griefnet. Griefshare.org, griefshare. Griefspeaksout.net, grief speaks out. Missfoundation.org, Miss Foundation. MyMiscarriageMatters.org, Miscarriage Matters, Inc. Nationalshair.org, share pregnancy and infant loss support. PaleNetwork.Sunnybrook.ca, Pregnancy and Infant Loss Network. POMC.com, National Organization of Parents of Murdered Children. PregnancyLoss.org, Pregnancy Loss Support Program. recover-from-grief.com, Recover from Grief. refugingrief.com, Refuge in Grief. SANS.org.au, SANS, Miscarriage, Stillbirth and Newborn Death Support, Australia. SANS.org.uk, SANS, Stillbirth and Neonatal Death Charity, UK. Sesame Street in Communities.org/topics/grief, Sesame Street in Communities, helping kids grieve. StarLegacyFoundation.org, Star Legacy Foundation. TAPS.org, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. TheGriefToolbox.com, The Grief Toolbox. UKSOBS.org, Survivors of Bereavement by Suicide. VDBS.org, Violent Death Bereavement Society. What'sYourGrief.com, What's Your Grief? WidowedParent.org, Widowed Parent. Grief Websites 6. MindRemake Project.org/2020/08/1/3/books-resources-for-grief-loss, resources for grief and loss. KD.ca/sites/default/win%sign 20 grief%sign 20 work_e.pdf, when grief comes to work, managing grief and loss in the workplace, a handbook for managers and supervisors. counseling-connection.com/wp-content/uploads/2013/08/coping-with-the-death-of-a-loved-one, a life effectiveness guide. foh.psc.gov/New York CU/coping-tips.pdf, a life care guide to helping others cope with grief. fullcircle.gc.org/wp-content/uploads/2016-05/BRM_2016-single-pages.pdf, Richmond's Bereavement Resource Manual 2016. lifesharing.org/wp-content/uploads/2016/02/grief and bereavement.pdf, a life care guide to grief and bereavement. melissainstitute.org/wp-content/uploads/2016/04/treatment_of_individuals_grief.pdf, treatment of individuals with prolonged grief and traumatic bereavement. mindremake project.org/2021/08/13/coping-with-loss-workbook, coping-with-loss workbook. moodjuice.scot.nhs.uk/pdf guides/bereavement.pdf, bereavement and grief self-help guide. my.cleveland-clinic.org/cc/media/files/bereavement/understanding-death-grief-mourning-resources-and, understanding death, grief, and mourning, a resource manual. NewYork-Life-Store.com/NewYork-L2/Product/1436203-_After a loved one dies, how children grieve and how parents and other adults can support them. omh.ny.gov/omhweb/grief/grief counseling resource guide.pdf, grief counseling resource guide, a field manual. roswellpark.org/sites/default/files/30161_journey_through_grief_journey resource booklet for families. SmileLifeWork.org/sites/all/files/griev.pdf, grieving resource, a guide to books and other references. sdkingston.simplertimes.com/st-book-adu-web.pdf, On the Wings of Grief, a bereavement journal for adults. talk-bereavement.nhs.uk/wp-content/uploads/2017/01/guide-bereavement.pdf, Let's Talk Bereavement, a self-help guide. web.ntw.nhs.uk/self-help/leaflets/bereavement.pdf, Bereavement, an NHS self-help guide. Chapter 3. A Grief Website Guide 2. Grief Resources. Books about grief are at number 155.937, BF 575, or RC 607, number 301.428, Widowhood, and there might be some Christian books at number 248.86 at the library. Legal books about death are at number 343. Books about death are at number 128.5, number 174, number 301.428, number 306.87-90, number 393, number 616.89 or BD 444 and R726. Books about death and terminal illness are at number 362.175 and R726.8. American Association of Retired Persons. AARP Fulfillment. 601 E St. N.W. Washington, D.C. 20049. 202-872-4700. 202-728-4370. AARP.org. Free pamphlet, Widowed Persons. American Grief Academy. Accord. 1930, Bishop Lane. Number 947. Louisville, Kentucky 40218. 800-346-3087. Association for Death Education and Counseling. 638 Prospect Avenue, Hartford, Connecticut 06105-4250. 860-586-7503. Fax, 860-586-7550. AIDSoffice@aol.com. Compassionate Friends. 900 Jory Boulevard, Oak Brook, Illinois 60521. 630-990-0010. CompassionateFriends.org. Helping organizations for parents who have experienced the death of a child. Dougy Center. National Center for Grieving Children and Families. POB 86852. Portland, Oregon 97286. 503-775-5683. help@dougy.org. grievingchild.org. Grief Recovery Institute. 8306 Wilshire Boulevard, Number 21. BH, California 90211. 800-445-4808. 323-650-1234. Gri@griefrecovery.com. griefrecovery.com. Cancer Grief Websites. CompassionateFriends.org, The Compassionate Friends, National Office, USA, Bereaved Parents. Dougy.org, The Dougy Center, the National Center for Grieving Children and Families, USA. Portland, Oregon. The Centering Corporation. Omaha, Nebraska 68134. Centering.org. Books, Death and Grieving. Children's Hospice International. 901 North Pitt Street, Suite 230. Alexandria, Virginia 22314. 800-242-4453, 800-24 child or 703-684-0330. Fax 703-684-0226. chionline.org. The Compassionate Friends National Office. P.O. Box 3696. Oak Brook, Illinois 60522-3696. 877-969-0010. 630-990-0010. CompassionateFriends.org. Bereaved families support meetings at local chapters and telephone support. psychom.net/depression.central.grief.html. Grief and bereavement. bereavedfamilies.net, Bereaved Families of Ontario. Bereavement Self-Help Resources Guide. growthhouse.org/default.html, Growthhouse. Resources for life-threatening illness and end-of-life care. misschildren.org, MISS. The untimely death of an infant, toddler, or young child. campheaven.com, Camp Heaven. Bridging the gap between earth and heaven. The gap between grieving parent and departing child. Memorial websites. beautifultribute.com. en.memoryicelife.com. gonatoosoon.org, set up a memorial website for someone who passed. healgrief.org. memorialhaven.com, online memorial. memoriespace.mind.org.uk. Gratitude websites / thankful websites. Some people keep personal gratitude journals. They write in what they're thankful for. about-personal-growth.com/appreciation-and-gratitude.html, appreciation and gratitude, the thankful and grateful feeling. artofmanliness.com. balancedlifecenter.com/category/gratitude. balanceandstyle.com/gratitude. bethankful.com/quotes.htm, be thankful, living with gratitude. explorefaith.org/living spiritually /thankful_life/bridges_to_gratitude.php. gratitudebands.com/index.html, gratitude mfg. gratitudecampaign.org. gratitudecollections.net/blog/thankful-thursdays-4. gratitudelog.com. gratitudemfg.com. guideposts.com, The Power of Gratitude, faith-based stories about gratitude to uplift your body, mind, and spirit. Grief and bereavement support group websites. accesshelp.org, Aircraft Casualty Emotional Support Services, offers peer grief support network for those who have survived or lost loved ones in an air disaster. bereavementuk.co.uk, Bereavement UK, a support forum with special sections for like-minded people who are grieving. To share thoughts and give word of comfort, plus practical advice about bereavement. drowningsupportnetwork.wordpress.com, Drowning Support Network, blog featuring articles. griefhealingdiscussiongroups.com, Grief Healing Discussion Groups, message board with sections covering child loss, anticipated death, and the death of a spouse or sibling. Also offers advice on healing and living without a loved one. griefloss.org, Center for Grief, Loss, and Transition, a non-profit organization offering help and hope for those who have experienced a significant loss in their lives, located in St. Paul, Minnesota, USA. griefshare.org, GriefShare, Grief Recovery Support Groups, features resources to assist and encourage people grieving the death of a friend or family member, and includes database of more than 1,200 listings of support groups. griefworks.com, GriefWorks, local resources, information, and education about grief and loss in life, as well as numerous links. Located in Montgomery County, Maryland, and serving the Washington, D.C., metro area. groups.yahoo.com/group/drowningsupportnetwork, Yahoo Groups, Drowning Support Network, peer support group for people who have lost loved ones in incidents involving drowning or other aquatic accidents, especially when no physical remains have been recovered, or the recovery process has been lengthy and difficult. Halos.org, Helping All Loved Ones Survive, Inc. Halos is a non-profit organization that provides information, emotional support, and referrals to surviving friends and family members of homicide victims. HoustonGriefSupport.org, Houston Grief Support, meeting every Sunday afternoon at a church in Pasadena, Texas. For bereaved adults. Includes links to other local groups. Kidney.org/transplantation/donor families, National Donor Family Council, National Organization for families whose loved ones have donated organs or tissues upon death. Includes grief resources, message board, pen pals, newsletter. Free membership. Mailboxtoheaven.com, Mailbox to Heaven, send a letter to a departed loved one. Multilingual. Members.tripod.com/carolanm/me exceed emotions1.html, Mixed Emotions Grief Support, a mailing list support group for adult children dealing with the death, or impending death, of a parent from whom they are emotionally estranged, due to emotional or verbal abuse, alcoholism, or other addictions or dysfunctions. MGEP.org, Morning Glory Ministries, located in El Paso, Texas, USA. Christian group offering solace to the bereaved. Includes articles about the stages of grief and taking care of yourself through the grieving process. Lists their activities. militarywidows.org/home.aspx, Society of Military Widows, for people whose partners died during active duty. Requires paid for subscription. Memorials, convention news, and an administrative checklist. momshalo.org, Mom's Halo, support for the mother loss. Includes a forum board, grief support articles, suggested reading, online newsletter, memorials, and poetry. nbnorwell.org, New Beginnings, singles group providing programs for adults who are distressed over being separated, widowed, divorced, or never married. Meetings held in Abington, Massachusetts, USA. Describes the different types of meetings offered and their history. NewHopeCenter.net, New Hope Center for Grief Support, a Christian-based bereavement outreach center providing group and individual support and/or direction to other resources that will help grieving individuals. Based in SC, Michigan, with ongoing groups for widows and widowers. TAPS.org, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, TAPS, a national non-profit organization made up of, and providing services to, all those who have lost a loved one on active duty with the armed forces. Offers a survivor peer support network. Grief counseling referral and caseworker assistance and crisis information. TeddyBearHollow.org, Ted E. Bear Hollow, located in Omaha, Nebraska, provides free bereavement and illness support programs for people of all ages. Gives information about their programs, events, training opportunities, and a blog. TheGeriefCaReplace.org, the Grief Care Place, located in Stowe, Ohio. Offers individual counseling and care groups. Lists their programs and services and events calendar. TipSanDiego.org, Trauma Intervention Programs of San Diego County, organization of trained volunteers who provide immediate emotional and practical support to victims and their families. Grief, loss, and bereavement mental health websites at cali.org/health/mental_health/grief %2c_loss_and_bereavement. Subcategories. Articles and research. Books. Counseling services. Death care. Personal pages. Child loss. Children's grief. Pet loss. Pregnancy loss. Widows. asahi-net.or.jp/tilde-kx5n-kgym/e_index.htm, 100 phrases for those who have lost a loved one. These phrases were composed with the purpose to empower and comfort those who have encountered the death of someone they love. bereavement-poems-articles.com, bereavement poems and articles. Poems and articles connected with grief, loss, and bereavement. Includes links and an online memorial tribute. BereavementMag.com, Bereavement Publications Incorporated, Living with Loss. Offers searchable magazine archives, free online support groups, electronic sympathy cards, electronic memorials, and a secure catalog. CatchAFallingLife.com, Catch a Falling Life. Offers articles, books, and professional services for those coping with grief and loss. Consolatio.com, Consolatio. Quotes by famous fictional and non-fictional people about death and loss. Links. CounselingSTLewis.net, The Sibling Connection. Offers support and resources for adults who lost a sibling during childhood or adolescence, including books, articles, general information, and bibliographies. creativegrief.blogspot.co.uk, Creative Grief. An archived blog with tips for managing. Crisis.org.il, Crisis, or Challenge, a guide to bereavement stress and modern-day terror. An online guide for teachers, parents, and those who have been victims of terror attacks, traumatic crisis and long-term stress. A special section on the tradition Jewish attitude to mourning is included. Cruise.org.uk, Cruise Bereavement Care. National charity set up to offer free, confidential help to bereaved people. Cruise produces booklets on coping with grief which you can buy online. Estrangements.com, Estrangements. Provides information about loss due to estrangement. Includes a journal, lists of books, movies, articles, other references, poetry, and people who have experienced estrangement. Facebook.com/grieflossrecovery, grief, loss, and recovery. Articles, memorials, poetry, and provides a safe haven for bereaved persons to share their grief through discussion forums. Friendsalongtheroad.org, Friends Along the Road, Inc. Relief for those in deep grief, so that they may have time away from pressing obligations in order to rest, seek consolation or healing and possibly re-evaluate their lives. Bulletin board and fundraising activities. ghpublications.com, Healing Through Grieving. Offers a 16-month program including workbooks and journal. Grief.com, Grief.com. Author and grief expert David Kessler's site. Includes questions and answers, articles, tips for coping and information about books he's written alone and with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Grief.org.au, the Centre for Grief Education. Based in Melbourne, Australia, and has as its mission to provide, through research, education and consultancy, support for bereaved people. Features newsletters, services, directory, and programs. Griefandrenewal.com, Grief and Renewal. International site to support people in their journeys of recovery and rebuilding following a loss. Resources, links, bulletin board, and people's stories of renewal. Griefhealing.com, Grief Healing. Bereavement support including articles, poetry, links, and a section on pet loss. Griefinc.com, Grief Inc. Official home of Darky, Tony, and Alicia Sims, who are internationally recognized public speakers on the topics of grief and grief support. Grieflink.asn.au, GriefLink. Information resource on death-related grief for the community and professionals. Includes coping with grief, helping the bereaved, resources, education and specific topics. Griefnet.org, GriefNet. Support services include resource referral, support groups, a library, and memorial web pages. Links to suicide prevention and survivors resources. Rivendell Resources, a charitable corporation. GriefRecoveryMethod.com, the Grief Recovery Institute. Offering information, handbooks, resources, and news to help individuals deal with grief. GriefSong.com, Grief Song, Healing the Loss. A place where to find creative and nurturing ways to honor grief following the death of a loved one. Includes songs of hope and inspiration, songs for memorials and funeral services, songs for rituals and spiritual renewal as well as meditation resources. HealingHugs.net, Healing Hugs. Created by a mother in memory of her young daughter, promotes rights for the mourner and compassion from the mourner's friends and family. Provides links, a guide to the mourner's rights to grieve and inspirational quotes. HopeForBereaved.com, Hope for Bereaved. Independent, not-for-profit community organization dedicated to providing hope, support and services for the bereaved. Counseling, support services, and books for the grieving. EDDNotKnowWhatToSay.com, I did not know what to say. Gives tips and ideas for the friends and family of the mourner to help them help the bereaved. Includes a blog. Inspirationalstories.com/death-dying-1.html, after hours inspirational stories, death and dying. Inspirational story and poem collection about death, dying and grievance. journeyofhearts.org, Journey of Hearts. A healing place in cyberspace created by a physician who combines medicine, psychiatry, poetry, prose, and images to provide resources and support. kobemandel.org, the Kobe Mandel Foundation. A foundation to help others cope with the loss of a loved one, this site offers therapeutic programs and events for bereaved families and young people, stories, and a newsletter. lossandyrenewal.com, Center for Loss and Renewal. Dedicated to understanding the process of grief and its impact on lay people and professionals. It includes a monthly column, On the Path from Loss to Renewal. medlineplus.gov/bereavement.html, Medline Plus, Bereavement. Directory of press releases, articles and fact sheets. openheartseminars.com, Open Heart Seminars. Johnny Welshon's workshops, books, and tapes to help heal the grief of the loss of a loved one. opentohope.com, Open to Hope Foundation. An online resource center for those looking for hope after loss. Resources include blogs, podcasts, YouTube spots, and current articles by experts in the field of grief, loss, hope, and healing. rfgifts.com, Rainbow Faith. Hope, inspiration and encouragement in the form of essays, photos, and poems for anyone going through grief recovery. TheLightBeyond.com, The Light Beyond. Provides articles about coping with loss and a forum. ToddHochberg.com, Touching Souls, Healing with Bereavement Photography. Todd Hochberg, photographer, national lecturer, and published author's work acknowledges and supports bereaved parents experiencing their baby's death while educating medical/grief professionals and the public about perinatal loss. TuesdaysChildren.org, Tuesdays Children. A family service organization that supports individuals who lost loved ones to terrorist incidents worldwide. Articles about the aid offered and upcoming events. webhealing.com, Crisis, Grief, and Healing. A place for people to find help in healing from loss. The Honor Page, the first internet memorial site, has over 500 memorials and continues to put up memorials free of charge. whatsyourgrief.com, What's Your Grief? Provides articles about coping with the grieving process. Also provides pay-for courses. widowedandyoung.org.uk, Way Widowed and Young. UK charity for men and women aged 50 or under when their partner died. A self-help group run by volunteers who have been bereaved at a young age themselves. widowersupport.org, Phoenix Rising. Information and support for widows, widowers and those who grieve over the death of a loved one. Features forum, advice, and personal stories. Grief therapist/bereavement counselor job websites. agework.com/agework. healthycareers.com/amhca. American Counseling Association. 6101 Stevenson Avenue No. 600. Alexandria, Virginia 22304-3580. 800-347-6647. Counseling.org. American Mental Health Counselors Association. 675 North Washington Street No. 470. Alexandria, Virginia 22314-1940. 800-326-2642. amhca.org. Association for Death Education and Counseling. 1 Parkview Plaza, No. 800. Oak Brook Terrace, Illinois 60181-4730. 847-686-2240. AIDC.org. Graduate Programs in Thanatology, the study of grief therapy. The College of New Rochelle. Graduate School. New Rochelle, New York 10805. 914-654-5000. eno@cnr.edu. cnr.edu/web/graduate-school/mental-health-counseling. The Dougie Center. National Center for Grieving Children and Families, POB 86852. Portland, Oregon 97286-0852. 866-775-5683. help@dougie.org. dougie.org. Gerontological Society of America. 1220 L Street, NW, number 901. Washington, D.C. 20005-4001. 202-842-1275. Geron.org. Grief counselors work at AIDS treatment centers, air or train crash sites, armed forces, assisted living homes, businesses, cancer care centers, churches, colleges, corporations, daycare centers, funeral homes, hospice agencies, hospitals, industrial accident sites, natural disaster sites, nursing homes, private practice, scenes of violence, schools, trauma centers. Chapter 4. A Children's Grief Guide. Grief for Children websites. freedath.net/grief-for-a-little-girl.html. aacap.org, Child Psychiatry. CompassionateFriends.org. dougie.org, Center for Grieving Children and Families. mentalhelp.net/guide/grief. nationalshairoffice.com. nmha.org, 800-969-6642, Mental Health Association. pages.prodigy.com/gifts/grief.htm. rivendell.org/about.html, griefnet. silentgrief.com. 6cnet.net.au/sans/sans.htm. webhealing.com/centering, books. ubhc.umdenge.edu/tragedy/helping-parent-shelp-children.htm. cp.crc.uiuc.edu/ec-archive/digest/2003/McIntyre03.html. canarygarden.org. extension.unh.edu/family/documents/s_death.pdf. cehl.org/deathinthefamily.html, the death of a grandparent. kidshealth.org/parent/positive/talk/death.html. bluekids.org/parent-caregivers/pap_de-eat-handying.asp. bellaonline.com/articles/p/art50679.asp. The children'shospital.org/wellness/info/parents/33051.aspx. Alive Alone, Inc. 11115 Dole Robinson Road, Van Wert, Ohio 45891. Support group for people who have lost children. Amend. Aiding mothers and fathers experiencing neonatal death. 4324 Berrywick Terrace, St. Louis, Missouri 63128. 314-487-7582. American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. 409 12th St. Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20024. 800-673-8444. 800-468-3637. acogi.org. Bay Memorial. 321 South 15th St. Escabana, Michigan 49829. 906-786-2609. Fax, 906-786-2609. Burial products for babies. Bereaved Parents of the USA. POG 95. Park Forest, Illinois 60466. 708-748-7672. Fax, 708-748-9184. Support Group for Bereaved Parents. Bereavement and Loss. Center of New York. 170 East 83rd St. NYC 10028. 212-879-5655. Bereavement Services. 1910 South Avenue. La Crosse, Wisconsin 54601. 800-362-9567. 608-791-4747. Center for Loss in Multiple Births. POG 1064. Palmer, Alaska 39645. 907-746-6123. Centering Corp. 531 North Saddle Creek Road. Omaha, Nebraska 68104. 402-553-1200. Fax, 402-553-0507. j1200@aol.com. Books about miscarriages and how to deal with grief. Cherokee Casket Co. 800-535-8667. Baby Caskets. Climb, Inc. Center for Loss in Multiple Birth. POG 1064. Palmer, Alaska 99646. 907-746-6123. Compassionate Friends. 900 Jory Boulevard. Oak Brook, Illinois 60521. 630-990-0010. CompassionateFriends.org. Helping organizations for parents who have experienced the death of a child. Good Grief Program. Boston Medical Center. 1 Boston Medical Center Place. MAT 5. Boston, Massachusetts 02118. 617-534-4005. Fax, 617-534-7915. Programs for Groups of Children When Kids Die. Hygia Foundation, Inc., an Institute for Perinatal Loss and Bereavement. POG 3943. New Haven, Connecticut 06525. Hygia.org. In Loving Memory. 1416 Green Run Lane. Reston, Virginia 22090. 703-435-0608. Support Group for Parents Who Have Lost Children. Johnson Institute. 800-231-5165. Booklets to help children deal with grief. National Council of Guilds for Infant Survival. POG 3586. Davenport, Iowa 52808. Support Group for Parents of SIDS Babies and Parents with High-Risk Babies. Parents of Murdered Children. 100 East 8th St. 8-41. Cincinnati, Ohio 45202. 513-721-5683. Fax, 513-721-5685. Pails of Hope Newsletter. Pregnancy and Parenting. After Infertility or Loss. Pen Parents, Inc. POG 8738. Reno, Nevada 89507-8738. 775-826-7332. penparents.org. Parent Education Program. Abbott Northwestern Hospital. 800 East 28th St. Minneapolis, Minnesota 55407. 612-863-4427. Information on organizing a pregnancy support group. Perinatal Loss. 2116 Northeast 18th Avenue. Portland, Oregon 97212. 503-284-7426. Fax, 503-282-8985. Many products from urns to books. Pregnancy and Infant Loss Center. 1415 East Wayzata Boulevard. Number 30. Wayzata, Minnesota 55391. 612-473-9372. Fax, 612-473-8978. babycenter.com/refcap/1422.html. bloomington.in.us/soxrv/mit/pregnancy-and-infant-loss-center.html. Support organization for parents who have lost a child through miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant death. Pregnancy Loss Support System. National Council of Jewish Women. 9 East 69th St. NYC 10021. 212-687-5030. 212-535-5900. Rainbow Connection. 477 Hannah Branch Road. Burnsville, North Carolina 28714. 704-675-5909. Fax, 704-675-9687. Reach out to the parents of an unknown child. 28 North Country Road. Mt. Sinai, New York 11766. 516-474-5300. Support organization for parents who have lost a child through miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant death. RTS Bereavement Services. 1910 South Avenue. La Crosse, Wisconsin 54601. 800-362-9567. Help to parents who suffer the loss of an infant. Share. Source of help in airing and resolving experiences. St. Joseph's Health Center. 301st Capitol Drive. St. Charles, Missouri 63301-2893. 800-821-6819. 314-947-6164. Fax, 314-947-7486. Share at nationalshairoffice.com. nationalshairoffice.com. Perinatal Loss Support Group. The Miss Foundation. POB 5333. Peoria, Arizona 85385-5333. 623-979-1000. MissFoundation.org. Unite, Inc. Grief Support. Jeans Hospital. 7600 Central Avenue. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania 19111-2499. 215-728-3777. Parents Grief for Children websites. nasbonline.org/resources/crisis_safety/griefwar.pdf, helping children cope with loss, death, and grief. Amazon.com/helping-bereaved-parents-bereavement/dp/158391365. Parent-shelpingparents.info. At health.com/consumer/disorders/parental-grief.html. ehow.com, how to help one parent cope with the death of the other. allnurses.com/forums/f8/help-parents-expertise-neonatal-death-2193132.html. thehealingplaceinfo.org/grief_support_parents.html. Baby loss grief websites. Grief is something you should allow yourself to live through. The more you repress the feelings and try to ignore them, the worse off you'll be until you acknowledge them, mourn, then get over it naturally in due time. Let others know. Write out your thoughts on paper. Consider joining the support group. Share. nationalshairoffice.com. 800-821-6819. There are children's books at the library that deal with death. Books about grief are at number 155.937, BF 575, or RC 607, number 301.428, Widowhood, and there might be some Christian books at number 248.86 at the library. Legal books about death are at number 343. Books about death are at number 301.428 and number 306.87-90. Books about death and terminal illness are at number 362.175 and R726.8. psychcentral.com/lib/a-birthmoms-pain. HygieFoundation.org. AfterAbortion.com. BabyLoss.com. MiscarriageAssociation.org. AmericanPregnancy.org/pregnancyloss/index.htm. freedath.net/grief-for-a-little-girl.html. aacap.org, Child Psychiatry. adoptionforums.com/f559.html. aplacetoRemember.com, 800-631-0973, books. climb-support.org, newsletter at climb-support.org, Center for Loss in Multiple Births. CompassionateFriends.org. conniex.com/hygia/hygiehome.htm, support for loss of a baby. Dougie.org, Center for Grieving Children and Families. duke.edu/tildebrooke006/miscarriage.html. empty-cradles.com. erichard.com/Aussie, support for parents who terminate a pregnancy after a negative prenatal diagnosis. hcc.cc.fl.us/services/staff/don/miscarry.htm. hygia.org. isa.org, Childbirth Education. inforamp.net/bfo/sbals, pregnancy after loss support. ivf.com/miscellaneous.html. mentalhelp.net/guide/grief. midwifingdeath.com. misschildren.org, Mothers in Sympathy and Support. nationalshairoffice.com. nmha.org, 800-969-6642, Mental Health Association. obgyn.net/women/women.aso $?women/loss/loss.htm. pages.prodigy.com/nv/fgck08a/penparents.html. pages.prodigy.com/gifts/aussie2.htm, support groups for parents after the termination of this pregnancy. pages.prodigy.com/gifts/grief.htm. pages.prodigy.com/nv/fgck08a/penparents.html, penparents for grieving parents. pinelandpress.com/support/miscarriage.html. resolve.org, support group mostly for infertile women but some info on miscarriages. rivendell.org/about.html, griefnet. rivendell.org/usa.html, state listings of bereaved parents organizations. sids.org, sudden infant death syndrome. silentgrief.com. 6cnet.net.au/sans/sans.htm. webhealing.com/centering, books. yara.6cnet.au/sans. Alive Alone, Inc. 11115 Dull Robinson Road, Van Wert, Ohio 45891. Support group for people who have lost children. Amend. Aiding mothers and fathers experiencing neonatal death. 4324 Berrywick Terrace, St. Louis, Missouri 63128. 314-487-7582. American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. 409 12th St. Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20024. 800-673-8444. 800-468-3637. acogi.org. Bay Memorial. 321 South 15th St. Escabana, Michigan 49829. 906-786-2609. Fax 906-786-2609. Burial products for babies. Bereaved Parents of the USA. epub 95. Park Forest, Illinois 60466. 708-748-7672. Fax 708-748-9184. Support Group for Bereaved Parents. Bereavement and Loss. Center of New York. 170 East 83rd St. NYC 10028. 212-879-5655. Bereavement Services. 1910 South Avenue. La Crosse, Wisconsin 54601. 800-362-9567. 608-791-4747. Center for Loss in Multiple Births. epub 1064. Palmer, Alaska 39645. 907-746-6123. Centering Corp. 531 North Saddle Creek Road. Omaha, Nebraska 68104. 402-553-1200. Fax 402-553-0507. j1200@aol.com. Books about miscarriages and how to deal with grief. Cherokee Casket Co. 800-535-8667. Baby Caskets. Climb, Inc. Center for Loss in Multiple Birth. epub 1064. Palmer, Alaska 99646. 907-746-6123. Compassionate Friends. 900 Jory Boulevard. Oak Brook, Illinois 60521. 630-990-0010. CompassionateFriends.org. Helping organizations for parents who have experienced the death of a child. Good Grief Program. Boston Medical Center. 1 Boston Medical Center Place. MAT 5. Boston, Massachusetts 02118. 617-534-4005. Fax 617-534-7915. Programs for Groups of Children When Kids Die. Hygia Foundation, Inc., an institute for perinatal loss and bereavement. epub 3943. New Haven, Connecticut 06525. Hygia.org. In Loving Memory. 1416 Green Run Lane. Reston, Virginia 22090. 703-435-0608. Support Group for Parents Who Have Lost Children. Johnson Institute. 800-231-5165. Booklets to help children deal with grief. National Council of Guilds for Infant Survival. epub 3586. Davenport, Iowa 52808. Support Group for Parents of SIDS Babies and Parents with High-Risk Babies. Parents of Murdered Children. 100 East 8th St. 8-41. Cincinnati, Ohio 45202. 513-721-5683. Fax 513-721-5685. Pails of Hope Newsletter. Pregnancy and Parenting. After Infertility or Loss. Pen Parents, Inc. epub 8738. Reno, Nevada 89507-8738. 775-826-7332. penparents.org. Parent Education Program. Abbott Northwestern Hospital. 800 East 28th St. Minneapolis, Minnesota 55407. 612-863-4427. Information on organizing a pregnancy support group. Perinatal loss. 2116 Northeast 18th Avenue. Portland, Oregon 97212. 503-284-7426. Fax, 503-282-8985. Many products from urns to books. Pregnancy and Infant Loss Center. 1415 East Wayzata Boulevard. Number 30. Wayzata, Minnesota 55391. 612-473-9372. Fax, 612-473-8978. babycenter.com/refcap/1422.html. bloomington.in.us/socksurvey/mit-pregnancy-and-infant-loss-center.html. Support organization for parents who have lost a child through miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant death. Pregnancy Loss Support System. National Council of Jewish Women. 9 East 69th St. NYC 10021. 212-687-5030. 212-535-5900. Rainbow Connection. 477 Hannah Branch Road. Burnsville, North Carolina 28714. 704-675-5909. Fax, 704-675-9687. Reach out to the parents of an unknown child. 28 North Country Road. MT Sinai, New York 11766. 516-474-5300. Support organization for parents who have lost a child through miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant death. RTS Bereavement Services. 1910 South Avenue. La Crosse, Wisconsin 54601. 800-362-9567. Help to parents who suffer the loss of an infant. Share. Source of help in airing and resolving experiences. St. Joseph's Health Center. 301st Capitol Drive. St. Charles, Missouri 63301-2893. 800-821-6819. 314-947-6164. Fax, 314-947-7486. Share at nationalshairoffice.com. nationalshairoffice.com. Perinatal Loss Support Group. The Miss Foundation. POB 5333. Peoria, Arizona 85385-5333. 623-979-1000. MissFoundation.org. Unite, Inc. Grief Support. Jeans Hospital. 7600 Central Avenue. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania 19111-2499. 215-728-3777. Chapter 5. Grief Help in Some Countries. Australia Grief Websites. Knology.org.au. thecompassionatefriends.org.au, 029292355. healingheart.net. bbf.org.au, Bonnie Babes. sans.org.au, Stillbirth and Newborn Death Support. sidsandkids.org. British Grief. cruisebereavementcare.org.uk hotline at 087016716777, helpline at cruisebereavementcare.org.uk. bluecross.org.uk, pet charity. winstonswish.org.uk, 0845-203-0405. ncb.org.uk/cbn, Child Bereavement Network. childbereavement.org.uk, 0845357100. compassionatefriends.org.uk. winstonswish.org.uk. Canadian Grief Resources. seasonscenter.com, Centre for Grieving Children. CPA.net, Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association. dayofmorning.ns.ca. blackribon.ca. cmh.ca/english/info_center/mh_pamphlet. s/mh_pamphlet_14.hdm, Canadian Mental Health Association. rainbows.ca. thesupportnetwork.com, 780-482-4357. Alberta, Canada. Bereaved Families of Ontario. 36 Eglinton Avenue East. Number 602. Toronto, on M4R1A1. 800-236-6364, in Ontario. 416-440-0290. Fax, 416-440-0304. bereavedfamilies.net. After Suicide Bereavement Support Group. Clinic Community Health. 870 Portage Avenue. Winnipeg, MB. 204-784-4090. clinic.mb.ca. AIDS Bereavement Project of Ontario. 571 Jarvis Street. 2nd floor. Toronto, on. 416-205-9888 EXT 254. abpo.org. Amherst Area Bereaved Support Group. Amherst, NS. 902-667-5400x6373. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Cornwall and Area. 144 Pitt Street. Cornwall, on. 613-936-1455. bfocornwall.ca. Bereaved Families of Ontario. POG 10015. Mississauga, on. 416-440-0290. bereavedfamilies.net. Bereaved Families of Cape Breton. Cape Breton Regional Hospital. 1482 George Street. 4th floor, Sydney, NS. 902-567-8137. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Durham Region. 1050 Simcoe Street North. Oshawa, on. 905-579-4293. bfodurham.net. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Halton, Peel Region. 6700 Century Avenue. Number 204. Mississauga, on. 905-813-4337. bereavedfamilies.ca. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Hamilton, Burlington Region. 293 Wellington Street North. Number 118. Hamilton, on. 905-318-0070. bfo-hamiltonburlington.on.ca. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Pembroke Region. Pembroke, on. 613-732-7894. bereavedfamilies.net. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Kingston Region. Kingston, on. 613-634-1230. bereavedfamilies.net. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Peterborough Region. Peterborough, on. 705-743-7233. bereavedfamilies.net. Bereaved Families of Ontario. London, South West Region. London, on. 519-686-1573. bereavedfamilies.net. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Toronto Region. 28 Madison Avenue. Toronto, on. 416-440-0290. bfotoronto.ca. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Midwest Region. 3570 King Street East. Pioneer Terrace. 2nd floor, Freeport Health Center, Grand River Hospital, Kitchener, on 519-894-8344. bfomidwest.org. Bereaved Families of Ontario. York Region. 17070 Yonge Street. Number 203. Newmarket. On 905-898-6265. bfoyear.com. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Ottawa Region. 211 Bronson Avenue. Number 308. Ottawa, on 613-567-4278. bfo-ottawa.org. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Ottawa Region. 211 Bronson Avenue. Number 308. Ottawa, on 613-567-4278. bfo-ottawa.org. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Hamilton, Burlington Region. 293 Wellington Street North. Number 118. Hamilton, on 905-318-0070. bfo-hamiltonburlington.on.ca. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Pembroke Region. Pembroke, on 613-732-7894. bereavedfamilies.net. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Kingston Region. Kingston, on 613-634-1230. bereavedfamilies.net. Bereaved Families of Ontario. Peterborough Region. Peterborough, on 705-743-7233. bereavedfamilies.net.